Some progress finally being made in the death of Ellen Greenberg. Of course, this was ruled a suicide. The medical examiner not being able to be swayed, not changing anything after many attempts and many arguments. But now it is finally going to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to hear arguments on this. Jennifer Coffindaffer, retired FBI special agent. I know you've been covering this case quite a bit on your own podcast channels as well, and you've been covering it on Twitter for a very long time, even before that. What does this mean that it's going to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court? Can you explain that?
This is just monumental news. It's monumental news, first of all, because so many superior courts and states never accept cases of any nature, right? It's such a small percentage of what they'll even consider. So the fact that they got this accepted is amazing. And quite frankly, it delves around this entire argument regarding whether the parents had standing to present their case
Hmm.
against the ME. So it wasn't whether it was factually supported by evidence. In fact, the judges at the lower level said, they were appalled, really. I don't know if that was the exact word they used, but certainly that was intimated from the language they used that it was unbelievable what had happened in this case, but that the Greenbergs don't have standing. And so, for that reason, the Supreme Court is going to hear it. And of course, what the Greenbergs are hoping for is that the Supreme Court says, you know what? You do have standing. So go back to the lower courts. And yes, you're going to be able to make this case.
Because they weren't able to argue it yet in the lower court. So if there's a lot of possibilities of what can happen here, and this could even be precedent setting for even other cases as well, depending on what the Supreme Court says. But let me understand this correctly. If the Supreme Court says you do have standing, you can go back. Then it's not a okay. There's a death investigation that's on here. It's not immediately a murder investigation or undetermined. They have to go still make that argument then, but they're given the opportunity. Basically, they're given the ticket to go in, get it stamped, go on the ride, and see what the lower court says, correct?
That's exactly right. This was so strange to say that because there's a death that occurs and because you're not married to the person, in other words, you're the parents, that you don't have standing to present such a case really makes absolutely no logical sense. And I'm hoping, as you said, there is case precedent here because parents should be able for their children who have no other kin, if you will,
Mhm.
be able to make such an argument on their behalf, if you will.
Where do you think this goes? I mean, if the Supreme Court looks at this, which they're obviously going to, and if they say, yeah, you can take it back, but then it goes back to the lower court, and then we get back into the whole ecosystem that the Greenbergs have been dealing with for years or decades, really, at this point, that really have had no desire whatsoever to see things their way. I mean, do we just kind of could? I mean, we could end up at a stalemate again, really, couldn't we? If they just say, "Yeah, we'll hear you, but we're not." Come on in, la 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 la. Okay, great. Thanks for coming in. Bye bye. That's what I'm kind of fearing in this case, considering how many roadblocks they've already gone into on a case that's utterly ridiculous, as in having been ruled a suicide.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is that chance and concern by the Greenbergs, but I think there's a lot of hope. And I say that because of this long opinion that was issued by that lower court. And they were actually quite convinced that this should not have been determined as a homicide, excuse me, as a suicide. Recall, it was always determined to be a homicide until a meeting took place. And what that uh, ME essentially said was, I'm changing my mind strictly based on the fact that she was alone.
Hmm.
And the only reason they determined she was alone was based on the fiance, who was the chief, in my opinion, the chief potential subject, on his word.
Hmm. And that's where it's
So
at
yeah, and
forever.
that's where it's at. It's really mind-boggling also when you consider there was a knife change
Hmm.
in the middle of the quote unquote suicide. There were two weapons used. That's another reason why it always just jumped off the page to me as being ridiculous that you're in the middle of killing yourself and you're going to go to a different knife.
Hmm.
It makes sense if it's a homicide to me because you could be attacking somebody and it bend or break, or it's not achieving exactly what you're trying to achieve, so you grab the other knife right there on the counter and you continue with the murder.
Why? Well, there's so many questions in the case of Ellen Greenberg that make no sense whatsoever. When we talk about the what was it? It was like a 30 some stab wounds. What I forget, because it's
20.
20 some stab wounds into her, several in from behind. And there's some questions here. I'm going to play devil's advocate for 1 second. Some people argue, well, some of these stab wounds were very superficial, if they will. They didn't go in very far. It was kind of like, you jam it. Oh, that didn't go in. I'm going to keep going. Some made it further. Some didn't. It sounds like more than it really is, I guess, is kind of the argument that's been made. Is that a valid argument?
I don't think in this situation, because I believe 10 of those wounds are from the behind and a huge gash in her head.
Hmm.
And the trajectory to me just seems so completely off. If you reach your hand back, as you can do it yourself, you can see you would come in at a different angle than what we can see in the autopsy and in the photographic evidence. It's not uh, a clear back to front as these wounds appear to be. So that's number one. Number two, uh, I don't think that her fiance, if indeed he ends up being the one they charge, I certainly think he's the chief person they'll look at. Um, he probably had never I don't believe any information that he's ever stabbed anybody else in his
Hmm.
life, right?
Yeah.
So there is some sort of, when you haven't done this before, what kind of power is it going to take? What sort of force? What's your knife selection? Maybe that's why the knife selection was changed to the larger knife. I equate it to, and I don't know if you've ever had to give anybody a shot,
Hmm.
but when I first learned to give shots, and you're all sitting around learning, you do it soft at first
Sure.
because you don't really understand the force that's necessary to penetrate the muscle.
Hmm.
And then you realize, wow, I really have to give this a ton of force.
Hmm.
Again, in crimes of passion, usually you don't see any huge issues like that. But the other thing is, I've thought about, initially was a big knife used that caused these you know deaths, the wounds that caused her death, and then later was it staged as a suicide by lightly poking to try to bring home that concept,
Hmm.
that thought process, if you're trying to sort of manufacture that possibility. So I could see both scenarios. I think the second scenario I stated might make more sense.
And then you have the post-mortem stab wound as well, which,
Mhm.
I mean, is there room for error on that? Could they have been wrong on that determination where this wasn't post-mortem? I mean, obviously it stands out as it could have been a suicide if it's post-mortem, but obviously they ruled it a suicide. So is there a gray area on that where maybe the science isn't perfect every time? I don't know.
I don't think there can be a gray area because that wound that you're talking about, I believe, was literally in the spinal column.
Hmm.
And so just think how the spine, especially in these areas, which were the neck areas, kind of that top shoulder neck area, that controls your arms,
Yeah.
in that area, the C5, C6, C7. But in
There.
any event,
Yeah.
uh, it's, when anybody who looks at this photo of her wounds and exactly where they are, that is an image that's made very specifically from the autopsy and from those wounds. It's logic defying that she could do that. And as you said, it's been stated that one occurred and that there's others that are post-mortem,
Hmm.
which again defies logic.
I mean, we're talking about a suicide where someone stabbed themselves in the back about 10 times, post-mortem wounds and switches the knife. Has that ever happened in history? Have we ever seen a suicide like this anywhere ever that where that's the course of action?
And then moves to the front. And I
Yes.
think it's also interesting to note that women typically, they really don't do things in suicide. I'm just saying typically that defaces them.
Mhm.
You'll see a lot of times pills that are taken, overdoses. You'll see the slitting of the wrist.
Mhm.
That again is not, and for the Greenbergs will tell you she had to have her makeup on to go to the grocery store. I have sisters like that.
Yeah.
They and a daughter. They look gorgeous, literally just to walk outside and get the mail.
Mhm.
And that is who Helen Greenberg was as a person.
Yeah.
So again, it defies logic that somebody with this particular, modus operandi in her life would all of a sudden take a knife and just massacre her body.
Mhm. Mhm. I know you've talked to the Greenbergs more recently than I have, and obviously no one has ever been charged in this. She did have a fiance at the time. He, of course, naturally would be the one that anyone would look at, no matter anyone in any case. That'd be the first person you would look at. But obviously innocent, no charges ever made, no investigation really ever done either. But what would the motive be on something like this within this case? Was there, I mean, just if we were to speculate as to why anyone would want to harm her or end her life?
Well, definitely that was my number one question. And I think that there were a lot of issues in this fledgling relationship.
Mhm.
I think, she was not happy. Um, According to the Greenbergs, they were really, um, you know, trying to be supportive and dealing with a lot of feelings she was having in terms of this relationship.
Mhm.
And recall that the engagement ring was on the table.
Mhm.
And so, of course, a lot of people believe, including the Greenbergs, I think that there was a fight
Mhm.
and that maybe she was ending it. And you know, just the whole situation that
Sure.
transpired. He was supposedly in the gym.
Mhm.
She supposedly had locked herself in, but the lock doesn't show what a lock would show if you broke in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and just his reactions,
Yeah.
him going crazy, it doesn't
Yeah.
make much sense. And the fact that the crime scene was completely cleaned up, Tony,
Yeah.
within about 24 hours, at the request of, family of the fiance.
Yeah.
It's all just ugly.
Well, and that I gotta say that 911 call is one of the strangest 911 calls I've ever heard. I mean, if you go back and listen to that, I don't have it readily available. If somebody listens to it on YouTube, you walk away from that going, this is like the love of your life, and you walk in and this is what you're seeing. I know, again, everybody reacts to grief differently, but I don't know, a healthy person, a person who's truly loves this person, hell, even if you were in the outs, even if you were just broken up, or if you knew that was imminent, I don't know how one reacts with that level of just, I don't know, callousness almost. To finding your significant other stabbed to death 20 times, and not realizing that, there's a knife here, literally, like a quote from the video. That was always shocking to me. Again, he's innocent. We're not saying he's guilty, not saying he had anything to do with it, but it's one of those things where, can we look at this a little bit closer, because it seems a little weird.
Well, the 911 call literally should be played at homicide class
Yeah.
as to what to look for in a concerning 911 call. And as you called it out, when they said, what's wrong? Did she fall? What happened? And he says, I don't know.
Hmm.
And then they ask him to do CPR, and she said, well, he's got a knife. She's got a knife in her chest. So it's, it's the whole situation that I said before about lies you have to contrive.
Hmm.
The truth never changes.
Yeah.
And as he's trying to explain this to the 911 operator, he's like a dog on a wet linoleum floor, just scrambling for answers because to me, he wasn't being truthful, wasn't
Yeah.
telling the truth.
I don't know that it was whoever did this. I don't know that it was super premeditated, but obviously it happened. There was talk, that she was depressed. That there might be some mental health issues going on here. That doesn't automatically mean that somebody's going to go kill themselves by any means. But I mean, could that? I mean, that's one of the arguments that's always been made. Of well, it wasn't the fiance, it wasn't anybody else. She was already suffering and maybe already wanted to do this. But again, the manner, okay, it just doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up, and I think there also is a difference between being, depressed and being anxious. I think her diagnosis more, was around
Hmm.
anxiousness and things along those that nature. I'm not a doctor,
Yeah,
by any means, but certainly that is how it is, described by the family, and no suicidal tendencies
yeah,
or assertions. Nothing was found on her laptop or her, anything that was, you know,
yeah,
at all
yeah.
indicating that she was suicidal. Two different things, in my opinion. And again, if we're going to really analyze the person she wasn't the type of person to want to mutilate her body.
Sure, sure. It doesn't. And another thought here too on this. I'm just kind of running through my mind right now. Of if the rings on the table. It's just pure conjecture. Rings on the table. She locks herself in. He goes to the gym. Comes back. She doesn't let him in. Maybe she's still alive at this point. Breaks the door down. Goes in. Argument ensues. This takes place again. Pure conjecture. Have no idea. But it doesn't necessarily mean that she's already dead when the door gets broken down, allegedly, or the door lock gets broken, because it doesn't show any real evidence of it either. I mean, I guess in theory, she could have let him in too. And he's saying that he had to break this open to get in. If that's the case, again, pure conjecture. The man has never been charged with anything, is innocent, but it's just there's a lot of scenarios that can happen here, and the way that we know the scenario is based strictly on the story that's been told. It's a he said, she said, but she's not around to give her side of it.
Right. And my only issue with the whole door, and I've actually posted videos showing what it takes to break open one of those latches, like
Hmm.
in the hotel
Yeah.
rooms that everybody has, right? You set the latch. It is causes so much damage to the side of the door, to the door frame, to the door itself, to the latch itself. It is very difficult. I posted videos of SWAT teams trying to get in.
Hmm.
It's difficult. So for one guy to just kind of put his shoulder up and nudge it, I don't believe that's what happened.
Yeah.
I think he left afterwards to create a alibi. This is, again, he has not been charged. I'm saying this is a possibility,
Hmm.
that he left after and then came and staged that
Hmm.
to look like that, which that you can do.
Or
There's,
yeah.
I've also posted about that. You take a credit card and you can do all these
Sure.
tricks to set it. But so I'm just not convinced
Yeah.
he ever had to break in.
Sure.
It's difficult to believe from the evidence we have.
Or whoever did it, whether whoever
Right.
did this, there's the crime scene doesn't add up to what the official story is. It's not saying he's guilty of doing it. It's saying whoever did this, the crime scene doesn't make any sense, and it wasn't investigated properly to really get, I think, a better sense of this. But with the existing evidence that is there on this case, even though there was never a true investigation into the scene, is there enough to ever bring charges on this, or is it just it's just far enough gone where there's just too much reasonable doubt really to know whether it was anyone or whoever it was.
Well, I think the big issue is the wiping of the crime scene.
Hmm.
As you stated, there's no crime scene left. And there wasn't after 24 hours. And it wasn't just as if relatives went in.
Yeah.
They hired a company that's what they do is clean up after murders
Yeah.
to go in.
Yeah.
And so this was wiped completely clean. Remember the devices, her devices, his devices, everything was taken by the family.
Hmm.
And so who knows what happened to them, what might have
Yeah.
been deleted in that time space. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be very difficult. But really, what the Greenbergs are looking for is just that change of manner of death
Yeah.
to even unknown, because, of course, what they're hoping to do is press a civil lawsuit.
Hmm.
And that civil lawsuit, all of these facts and information can come out. So
Yeah.
while I believe it's quite difficult, right, to make the criminal case, I think it's a whole different story on that civil case. He had motive, he had means, and he had opportunity. And I think they want to take it to court.
Well, and the rules of discovery are very different in a civil case as well. So who knows what could be drug up there, which actually could end up leading towards a criminal case, depending on what is actually found. And just the precedent that this sets going forward. Hopefully, there is some sort of ruling here that does affect other cases. So if someone else is in a similar type situation, it doesn't turn into what the Greenbergs have gone through. Even if we can never quite get to the bottom of this, it won't have necessarily all been in vain.
Yeah, what they went through and suffered in this case, it has just been life changing and such a horrible toll on them, on their relationship, on
Yeah.
their life. This was their only daughter.
Hmm.
This was their only son. This was their only child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for to be abandoned really by the system
Hmm.
completely.
Yeah.
Law enforcement failed them. The judicial system failed them. This is a chance to reverse all of them and
Hmm.
to give them a chance at least some, judicious outcome, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm very much looking forward to this. It'll take a little bit of time when it gets there, but hopefully we see some progress in a case that certainly needs. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.